now move on to our next session, which is about the future of digital payments. And the moderator will be Mr. Khilan Haria, the SVP product of Razorpay. We'll please have you up on stage. And I would now like to invite the panelists who will be a part of this panel. Could I please invite Mr. Vikas Bansal, Country Head, Amazon Pay. Mr. Rahul Handa, EVP Strategic Services, ONDC. Anubrata Biswas, MD and CEO, Airtel Payments Bank. Gunjan Pradhan, Director of Payments at Netflix. And Sharath Bulusu, Director Product Management, Google.
We've got Vikas Bansal. Vikas heads Amazon Pay for India. We've got Rahul Handa, Strategy and a bunch of more things at ONDC. We've got Anubrata Biswas, CEO, Airtel Payments Bank. We've got Gunjan, she heads Payments at Netflix India. We've got Sharath Bulusu, Sharath heads Google Pay India. Varied perspectives, and we'll jump right into it. I'm going to start with Vikas over here. Vikas, I think the last 5-7 years, India has scaled up in payments massively. UPI has played a pivotal role. You are uniquely placed to look at consumer trends, merchant trends, online, offline, recurring. What do you see as the future in terms of method mix? What will dominate? What will scale? What will possibly get killed? Maybe will help all of us figure out where to focus our energies next 5 years.
Sure. First of all, really glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. I think when we look at India and India's payment space, it's really on the cutting edge, and what we have delivered, if I look back like 7-8 years ago, to what we are today. And if we think about from a customer, consumer, or a small business perspective, what they're looking for, they're really looking for a fast, friction-free way to pay, which is trusted and safe, and something that extends their budgets, right? Everybody, if you look around, like those are the really things when it comes to payments they're looking for. And the kind of innovation that we've seen with UPI, it doesn't need any introduction, just really hitting on those points is that it is friction-free, it's fast, and it's convenient and trusted. You know, it's phenomenal. Same thing like on card sides, tokenization that we've done is just phenomenal. It's nowhere done in the world, and which made the card payments more secure, and they made more convenient, right? The success rates went up like almost up to 5 percentage points to what it was earlier. Then you look at, you mentioned autopay with all the new master directions and the kind of innovation we've done in the industry. I don't think any place elsewhere that we've done. So autopay is kind of now booming. And then there is even the wallet where we have specific use cases, it becomes extremely important, transit and commute. When you look at all of it, is we've driven innovation, which no other country has done, which is what we are seeing, and it will only accelerate from here. Now, you know, when we look at our kind of on Amazon Pay, merchants is to a point that almost like the digital penetration has gone from where it was to like almost 80% plus today, right? It is phenomenal on what we see, which is really thanks to all of us, you know, in this room, the regulator, to NPCI, to our networks who have done a phenomenal job in this journey. Now, to your point about, right, where do we go from here? Now, when we look at the mix today, and I'm talking about, and I'm not talking like the entire country, but let's say if we focus on online and large offline, you know, UPI is by far the largest share, right? Let's just say almost half of the transactions today are happening on UPI, and the rest half is, say, on cards and wallets and all other forms factor, right? But we are seeing now the next phase, and UPI is going to be one on the cutting edge. And what really is good is now moving from linking your bank account, now your ability to link your RuPay credit card to your credit lines to your wallet. I think it's becoming a container which I think will drive, because a lot of customers what we see is they're saying like, look, payments touches everyone, every part of commerce, and not everybody wants to pay from their bank account, right? And people want to pay from their credit cards, people want to pay from credit line and so forth. So we will see some massive acceleration now to be able to link all of those things. And thank you to the regulator for facilitating this, like, and really thinking ahead from where it is today. Similarly, I think on auto pay, and we'll touch upon this later, is also one critical trend that we will see that the penetration is very low, and then you will see that kind of accelerating if we look at next 3 to 4 years. And I will say credit, like India is really under-penetrated even today, and there's a lot of work, like I think as an industry has been done on credit cards to get more customers, credit card, which credit card becomes a beautiful payment product, which helps you extend your budget as well and earn your rewards. But then now the credit lines and so many other things coming up. We'll see in installments. I think installments, again, is one of the very large trends we will see, that especially the point of sale financing. So we will see a lot of that coming forward, and I wouldn't be surprised, that we will see even massive shift where UPI will continue to be gaining share. Maybe it'll become 2/3 or even more of all kind of that segment of payments. Whereas what will lose out really is which is not innovating, right? And if it is frictionful, and I will say cash will go down for sure, and some of the other payment methods that existed, like net banking and others, probably would. But there's a room for us as a country for us to grow, and you will see that we are going to continue to grow very rapidly over the next 3 to 5 years.
Got it. That's good to hear. Good perspectives. Sharath, I'm going to come next to you again. A large player in the UPI space in India. And Vikas spoke about the fact that UPI has a potential to grow from 50 to 70 and maybe 90 as well, possibly, right? So what do you think can unlock that for us? Like, what's really needed for today, maybe 250 million users using UPI to maybe 1/3 of our population to a large majority of our population, and this becoming dominant?
Yeah, probably more, but I think the sentiment is still true, that it's still far lower than where it can be. I think it's part of just where we are on that journey. If you just look at the last 5 or 6 years, it's grown phenomenally well. There are a few factors that I think of when we try to play out, okay, over the next 5 to 10 years, how is the world of payments going to change? I think it's not going to change even in 10 years maybe, that trust in payments is going to be a recurring problem. We've got to accept that there are a lot of aspirational positive things about the country, but it is still a big challenge, right? Like making sure that more and more people can trust the system, especially as they're new to payments, they're new to online modes. It's not an easy thing. It's one thing to say, let's try to drive that with user education, let's try to drive that with something that detects fraud and blocks it. But I think that investment has to happen across the board from every player in technology, in enforcement, in a number of different areas. The second factor that's going to matter is the forms of payment. I mean, UPI has gotten to where it has gotten largely by enabling people to pay out of their bank accounts. As we enable people to pay out of credit lines, whether those happen to be credit cards, you call them credit lines, any other form, I think that is what Vikas was referring to. It can come in different forms, right? EMIs, revolving credit, whatnot. I think unlocking that will make a very big difference. The third factor that we normally think about is, at the end of the day, payments is a means to an end. By itself, a payment is often not the thing. And I think the more these journeys become tightly coupled, the more interesting and easy you can make it for people. And a big part of taking that friction out is almost getting to the point where you feel like the payment is invisible. You're beginning to see glimpses of that when you tap and pay. You're beginning to see glimpses of that when you drive through a FASTag-enabled toll gate, right? You are actually making a payment. You just don't see the payment happening in the same way. And I think these three factors will matter a lot. How do we take people along in a way that maintains a very high level of trust in the system? How do we ensure that different forms of payment that enable a high velocity of transactions to happen continue? And how do we take friction out?
Thanks, Sharath. You spoke interestingly about two big things. Trust is going to play a major role. Payments is a means to an end. I'm going to come to Rahul now. because now we are evolving the problem to commerce and not payments, right? Rahul and ONDC are attempting to revolutionize commerce in India. So I think two things, Rahul, from you, maybe a quick 60-second summary of what is ONDC, and more importantly, what do you think will help scale the open network, and do you think we'll be able to break the monopoly of Flipkart, Amazon of the world?
Okay, interesting questions. Okay, so let's put it one way, right? So to Sharath's point, I actually completely agree with him that the payment space is actually something which is like almost the penultimate point of a full-blown transaction. To your point, exactly, right? Somebody has to take a particular product, add it to cart, somebody has to turn around and say, yes, I want to check out, and then trying to go from that point to the point that it is in my house, right? Somewhere in the middle of it, I've done a transaction. The next step beyond payments is that after-sales support and all. Now, and that's where I also agree with him. But where I don't agree with Sharath and Vikas, right, is that look at other options, etc., but we are still solving for India. You are not solving for Bharat. That is a fundamental issue I have with this conversation, right? Now, what I want to do is, with your permission, everyone, I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes and tell you what is ONDC. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, how many of you know about, how many of you have heard about ONDC?
The fintech conference, so pretty much everyone, yeah.
No, not necessarily. Now let me ask you the other question. How many of you actually understand what is ONDC? Yeah, see, the number of hands went down.
That's definitely few, I agree, yeah.
Okay. Now, in the standard platform world, and which is what all of us have actually grown up with, that platform is somewhere where I go to, and generally in the finance world, they are purpose-controlled applications. You will go to one particular application when you want to buy some groceries. You will go to a different application when you want to consume OTT, right? Or you will go to a different platform when you want to get food, or a different platform when you go to get something from your banking side. All of them are different segments, but each one of them works in a very simple way. Customer acquisition, vendor management, payment systems, etc. They are all coupled inside of that one particular platform itself. Agreed? And that's the way all of us think that's the way commerce needs to be done. Am I right? You can say yes, it's okay. Yes? So, if that is the way that we've all grown up, thinking that is the only way to do it. But now I'm going to challenge all of you to say, no, that is not the only way to do it. So, what if I turn around to you and say, you as the customer should be able to go to any buyer application, which means that you should be able to go, right? So if this was a standard platform, it's a coupled unit. I have a buy side and I have a sell side, and they're completely coupled. And the sell side is where all the sellers are and everybody is going to respond back to that particular customer. I'm just going to break it up. You as the customer will still go to a buyer application, whoever you trust. That part we also agree on. Okay? That you will, let's say, go to a Google Pay site. Or you will go to Razorpay if they have a buyer application.
We don't, still B2B.
Yeah. We'll get there. Okay? Now comes the part where you as the customer are going to put in a request on the buy side. That request will go to the ONDC gateway. And gateway will send it to various seller side applications. By the way, that gateway is all that is ONDC. ONDC is not a buyer side or a seller side application. So that means that you are, let's say, going to a Google Pay, if I may take that as an example, right? And you are now going to put in a request and say, you want to get a Namayatri cab ride. Okay? Or rather, you will only say cab ride. It will get sent to Namayatri and or whoever are the other players on the network who are saying that they can do cab rides. Similarly speaking, you will probably go to like a phone pay and put in and say, I'm looking to buy food. They will now send it to various seller-side applications who will respond back. The customer's experience stays on the buyer side itself. At which point in time, I have put in whatever I want. I have chosen that as a customer. And the moment I choose that, ONDC drops out of the picture. Now it becomes a bilateral conversation, machine to machine, but between that buyer application and that seller application. Once I've decided and I've paid, and the payment is something that is why we are all here, and money makes the world go round, not love and fresh air. So at that point in time, I want to make sure that that product money is going to go from, let's say, if the buyer application is the collector, to the seller application, down to the vendor. The vendor or that seller could be Gupta Electrical Store, who's sending me a particular product. How do I make sure that this money is going to go seamlessly from one point to the next point to the last point, and all in the span of, let's say, a day? Can we do that? Okay? So, where I agree with you also is that we have made step changes. Yet, I do not believe that those step changes are finished. There are many, many more step changes to go. Okay? To give you an example, when we started with UPI, nobody even believed that it would work. How many of you were around when they started? Okay, you were around. We are old people, man. Okay? Now, that being said, do you know how many transactions they do in a month right now? This group should know. 12 billion transactions a month. Okay? To the second part of your question, which is, what am I going to do to the duopoly or so of every different platform that is there? No, I am not here to kill them. No, I am not here to make sure that they die out. As a matter of fact, because of somebody like ONDC, they will also probably grow a little bit. But let's look at the digital commerce side to it. You look at any of the different segments, right? Whether you look at food, you look at food delivery, you look at grocery, anything. Everywhere you have maximum 2, maybe 3 platforms, right? Now, for all of these different platforms, they kind of control the market. My coming in will allow for a lot more smaller people and people to come in to start buying and selling. At this point in time, digital commerce is only used by, say, 6% of India. As ONDC, I intend to take it down to 75% of India. What that means is that I will add another billion people to buy and sell. Now, going back to the UPI example, once UPI came about, firstly, nobody believed that they would work, but here we are talking about UPI. MasterCard and Visa didn't die out, did they? No. They also grew, but UPI grew also. So, we are not here to try and knock out these different platforms, but as a matter of fact, because of us, they'll grow a little bit, but there'll be other sets of people who will come into this to start growing the overall ecosystem.
That's awesome. I think the whole
pie
will grow. Yeah, go on.
Now, at that same point in time, payments is got to be something which has to be seamless no matter where we are. Whether it is the pav bhaji wala outside of Kirti College in Bombay, or it is the cycle rickshaw wala in Saharanpur, or outside this hotel. Payment from you to them or them to somebody else needs to be easy, frictionless, and very, very importantly, in their language. Don't think that just because you can transact in English using a smart, very cool UI looking app, that's what they want. That, in essence, is break the mental model to think that, oh yeah, this is done, now we just have to incremental changes. No. There are still step changes out there, which is what you will propose to us and we will enable. You want me to shut up or you want me to keep
Super
going?
interesting, yeah. I think Rahul shared some interesting take that the whole pie of digital commerce in India will boom, accelerate. Of course, that will accelerate digital payments as well. Anubrata, I want to bring you in, right? I think Rahul spoke a lot about how this can make, the seller ecosystem more vibrant, give more choices to buyers. On the buyer side and in general, the trends and all, how do you see the Bharat user emerging? And in general, what will need to be solved to scale both digital commerce and payments?
So, good. Rahul, great sort of overview. I just want to build on what Sharath was saying. If you really look at the NPCI stats, Praveena was here.
If you can be closer, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. If you really look at the NPCI stats, Praveena was here. Broadly, the growth in users has lagged the growth in transactions. Our view is that 250 million users will get to 450 million users. And at a very high level, while of course the 750 million maths, Rahul, which was coming was of course like a great sort of aspiration to go to. But the incremental 200, high level we believe is 130 million. Bharat, 70 million urban. The 70 million we'll talk about a little later, but let me talk about the 130 million users and maybe share a couple of anecdotal experiences. When we started the payment bank business, when Airtel Payments Bank came into play really in serious scale in 2018, we started seeing an offtake from one very interesting consumer segment, which we very quickly coined and termed the rural influencer. And let me sort of paint the consumer profile here. This is a 25 to 35-year-old male, tier 4, tier 5, and he routes all digital payments for the community because the community is not mature enough to yet do digital payments on their own. This was a very rapid uptake of our proposition, which was probably the safest and easiest bank account to operate for them, but most importantly, also the most equitable bank account relationship, simply because that person was denied service of even opening a bank account because the person didn't have, for example, basic documents. And as you know, the Airtel Payment Bank model and all payment bank models are fundamentally sort of delivered on digital identity stacks, no paper, etc. This has now very quickly evolved into one very large dominant user set, which is tier 6 villages. I want to give you one statistic here. If you go to the RBI website, there are roughly 500,000 villages with population less than 2,000 in India. This is banked by 350,000 business correspondents. All official statistics, I'm not inventing any number. But I want to tell you today that 250,000 of those agents are Airtel Payment Bank agents. So we built a deep sort of almost hand-holding network over the last 4-5 years, and a dominant uptick set. A fourth of the users today are women in the village who are for the first time establishing an identity of their own, opening a bank account which they want to keep separate from their family or husband, and really coming on to what I would call digital India or digital Bharat first. The reason I'm sharing this insight is that now if you see what they do with this digital money, actually the dominant use case is a very simple monthly use case, which is that of doing a recharge for the smartphone she has purchased. This now needs to really sort of penetrate deeply, and it cannot happen substantially without one major innovation which I think now needs to scale in India, which is that if you at a very high level look at value chains, agriculture is broadly 16-17% of India's GDP. While the horizontal platform of digital payments on UPI and the bank account with Aadhaar has been built, digitization of value chains in India is still very incomplete. If you look at poultry, fishery, farming, dairy, the value chains are not digitized to the extent that cash can be completely eliminated. And the person in a tier 6 village has enough options to spend digital money in and around the village. So this is, I think, the next big level of evolution which is going to drive Digital Bharat, certainly 100 to 130 million. We are very proud of the fact that we open now 1 million accounts a month. 1 in every 10 bank accounts in India are opened through Airtel Payments Bank, a dominant share of them being rural. The other share, of course, urban, but that's a conversation maybe for a later question. You asked for about Bharat, so I'm just giving that statistic to you.
Very interesting insight, unique perspective on a user set. A lot of folks in the room, a lot of us may not relate to very actively, right? But innovative work on, scaling in the real Bharat out there. Thanks, Anubrata. I'm going to now jump back to tier 1 with Gunjan, right? Netflix, largest streaming platform, one of the largest in the country. You are uniquely poised to share insights, like how do we see the intersection of content, video, payments all coming together to create the experience of the future?
Thank you for the question, and it's an honor to be here, especially with all of these dignified personalities. I think at Netflix, the way we view payments is really payments being the engine of commerce and growth. One of the key principles we operate with is payments should never be the reason customer cannot sign up for Netflix, and should not be the reason a customer leaves Netflix. And all of this is to tie in with our larger goal of entertaining the world, where we believe that in order to be able to efficiently do that, we have to be focused on emphasizing on a couple of things. One is ensuring that we have the right payment method mix that is optimized for our current audience, and that is optimized for their preference and choice. The other thing that we focus very, very deeply on, and we care very deeply about, are customer experiences, largely payment efficiency. That's something that we focus very, very deeply and we care very deeply about, and innovation. And last but not the least, security is at the heart of everything that we do. When we talk about payment preferences for customers, I think India is such an interesting market where customers have very varied payment needs. And so enabling a local payment method not just helps us, of course, fuel the growth, but it also helps us get access to new audiences to us. And we were able to do that when we launched UPI Autopay, and we can proudly say we were amongst the first merchants to help launch it and grow it. We were truly able to capture that audience and understand how do they operate on the platform after having used that payment method to come on the platform. Subscription is such a small use case for India today, but it is an ever-increasing use case, and I think that's also bolstered with a lot of regulation and a lot of conversations that are happening in rooms like these. But it is also one of the most neglected use cases, largely because of the size relative to all of the e-commerce transactions that happen globally and in the market, and that really sets us back because we're not present in tables where these conversations happen, where new use cases or solutions for use cases get built. And so we're always very open to collaborate with the ecosystem and trying to find what those solutions could be. When we talk about payment efficiencies, we're always trying to optimize for transaction success, optimize for retention efficiency. We're always trying to see what is it that we could do in order to further the growth of machine learning and fraud, in smart routing, in efficient retries, even doing customer experiences, or something as simple as customer experiences are A/B tested so that we have the optimal mix that we present in front of the customers. And again, security is at the center of everything that we do. We were, because we're a global merchant, we can speak on record with this, but we have been one of the first adopters of network tokens globally because we believe in the value of security. We not just meet security standards, but we exceed it. And all in the vein of making it a delightful experience for the customer. We also employ a lot of machine learning and fraud, where we are trying to ensure that we are stopping abusers from abusing the system, but we are also introducing machine learning in a way to minimize false positive, so that at the end of the day, any relevant customer who wants to truly come on Netflix to enjoy the service is delighted by the end-to-end experience that Netflix has to offer. From the time we generate or create a demand to the time we collect the demand, which is where payments sits at, we truly believe that that's the function of payments at Netflix, and hopefully the payments at Netflix is setting up Netflix India for success, just in the manner in which we go about doing this.
Thanks, Gunjan. I'm going to pick on one small thing you brought about, that recurring is subscriptions is small in India. And you said that maybe there isn't enough incentive for the ecosystem to innovate because it's small. So I'll bring on Vikas now. Vikas, of course, Amazon Prime is one of the largest, subscription, content platforms in the country. How do we turn around the recurring economy of the country?
No, good question. So, first of all, recurring payments to me is kind of an evolution, right? You start with kind of cash to paying digital payments, and then you get comfortable, and then you start to say, look, I'm ready to now do recurring payments. And what needs to happen, it boils down to penetrate. By the way, recurring payments is so important that we know that once customer does a subscription or recurring payment with you, the retention, it's just doubles or trebles to what it is without it, right? So it's very, very important high value action for us, right, for the customer. Now, what really it boils down to three things. Again, going back to the basics is, are these trusted? Are they convenient? And then are they habit forming, right? So when it comes to trust, I think as a country, as a market, we've done a phenomenal job after the master directions came in, where the trust we see that is going up manifold with some very basic things like customer explicit consent with 2FA, right? Sending notifications, before the charge and after the charge with a specific option for customer to pause it, right? And then also to be able to manage it, and gone are the days when then customers will get hit and they won't even know like what it was for and how to reverse it. So that has really built the trust in recurring payments. Now, the second part around convenience is, I think the recurring payments on cards always existed, but now with UPI, it has increased the coverage quite significantly to almost to a point that almost as 100% of the customers can set up on UPI and hence can set up recurring pay, which becomes very important. But I think we still have friction in terms of setup success rate. If I look at industry data, my sense is still about 1/3 of the setups fail, and it could be less as we move forward. So still we have some work to do in terms of how do we improve the setup success rate, which is very important, right? Because you are in the flow, you want to be able to set up and go. And there are a variety of reasons why that is the case. That's one. The second part of it is also about the success rate, right? When we look at a regular payment success rate versus a recurring payment success rate, there's still quite a bit of delta, right? Or difference between the two. And we need to kind of iterate on the experience to get better at it. So those are the two. And then coming to the last part about habit forming, I think that's where a lot of innovation is coming and it's needed. It started out, as you said, for Prime subscriptions, Netflix, Prime Video, there's some of them, but I think what would be game changer is my regular bills. I'm so comfortable that I'm able to pay them and set it up, and then, it just it's almost like an invisible payment, right? Same thing on kind of our pay on delivery use cases where you can set it up and then the charge happens when, I actually hand over you the product, right? But it takes the friction of getting the cash at doorstep away from you and so forth. I think the habit forming also has to happen, but it is going to be an evolution. I think with all the things in place on trust, on now convenience with some work that I mentioned, as well as now more and more use cases and customers getting comfortable, you will see that. And then that becomes an inflection point as well, in my view. So we're going to be on a cutting edge. And maybe in 3 years, we will say that has accelerated 20x or 30x from what it is today.
Super. Though the scope is there. Hopefully we'll see more innovation to make it more seamless. I'm going to come to my last question now. Sharath, I want to bring you back. We can't not have the tech angle, and Google being Google, we go to ask Google, right? To scale payments in India, right? Future of payments. And you operate in a space where, UPI app where differentiation is not easy to do. I'm sure you largest player, so you do differentiate yourself, right? So how do you foresee that, GPay will differentiate, scale? What tech elements you think will come in which will be unique for both the Indian ecosystem and for GPay?
So while it's true that a lot of what Google's been able to achieve, including with Google Pay, rests on how we apply technology, I think the reason those products have worked is because they work for people. I think, yes, we do invest in creating technology, advancing technology for its own sake, because ultimately there are going to be algorithmic advances, advances in materials, advances in all sorts of computing techniques, etc., that will make the world a better place. But ultimately, they only work if you can apply them really well. And we've had our own fair share of successes and failures, where we've created technology, it didn't work, and then we've morphed it into something else. I think it probably, one way to answer this, at the risk of offending some of my co-panelists, you've all spoken about Bharat and India. I just fundamentally don't believe there's a dichotomy there. It is one country with lots of diverse users. India, like Bharat is not tier 3, tier 4 cities. I will show you a more deprived urban have-not for whom it's harder to build than for a well-off person in tier 3 who's got the same aspirations as any of us in this room do. We used to sell these super fancy sneakers in one of the commerce businesses I was in, at 25,000 rupees in 2016-17. We used to sell them out in 3 minutes, with more than 50% of the orders coming from the northeast of India, because it was a matter of access, not because people don't know that stuff. One of the people who puts me to shame every time I speak with her is Chetna Gala Sinha. And she once pulled me aside and said, don't build poor solutions for poor people. And here she didn't mean poor in the sense of poor economically, poor in terms of access, poor in terms of, let's say, knowledge about something, poor in terms of the ability to connect the dots in certain areas. Create solutions knowing that everybody is aspiring to the same lives that each one of us is aspiring to. Have the optimism to believe, and I think maybe most of us are in technology and building products because we have that optimism that things are going to get better. That if I'm able to use a smartphone, so is someone who doesn't actually have a smartphone today. Now, does it mean that you don't need different solutions? You do. Like, and maybe this is the bias coming from someone who's built products in a space where we've created products that work in hundreds of languages. That, yes, you've got to solve, right? To your point, someone wanting to have the confidence of doing payments because of the language they speak, not wanting to get that back in English, absolutely we got to do. Someone who's got a visual or muscular disability and is unable to operate a smartphone like we take for granted, create accessibility solutions for them. I mean, these are things that as product managers, as designers, as engineers, we should agonize about. And if we do, then it's no longer a question of, are you solving for one characterization of India or Bharat, right? And in fact, world over, we've seen the same product scale. Netflix works the same way wherever you go in the world. Google search works the same way wherever you go. The trick is in bringing the right mix of content that appeals to the people there, or in finding the right answer to the question about what's the best, I don't know, credit card for me. Someone searches that, the answer is different in the UK, different in India, different in Indonesia, somewhere else. I think that is what I would say, and really that's what technology needs to bring, the power of being able to create a solution for every individual that works for them in the way that they lead their lives.
Thanks, Sharath. Personalize at every user. Yeah, very powerful. Coming towards the end of our time, so maybe 20 seconds from all of you, starting from Anubrata, right? If all of us had one magic wand, right, and one innovation we could do, which we think will transform Indian payments over the next 5 years. One sentence each, maybe starting from Anubrata, Rahul.
So I think we've done fantastic work on the identity stack and of course on the payment stack. I think really to build on what I would call ubiquitous, equitable, invisible payments, we need to also build a authentication stack which can be accessed in multiple ways. I'll give you one example. You're still unable to do KYC on the mobile, accessing UIDI KYC. So I think authentication layers is going to be an interesting. I don't see it reflected in the philosophy and principles so much today.
Thanks, Anubrata. Rahul, one magic wand, apart from ONDC.
20 seconds, not possible. But, so I look at this from a simple perspective, right? And to that, to some extent, I agree with Sharath. That yes, there is We have to build out different solution sets which will scale. But each of those has to be aligned into who's going to be using it, right? So for example, ONDC is now up in PDS stores, so public distribution. Now, if I'm somebody who's utilizing the PDS, can I actually utilize the subscription service? Because I know I'm going to get 5 kgs of sugar every month, and I know that the rate is going to be just this much. Can I set that up as an auto payout? That is one part to it. However, that being said, I also strongly believe that the next step change in payments is going to be towards not just the languages side to it, but also from the voice perspective to it. Because again, everything that we are talking about is somebody who can read it, somebody who will be able to understand that because of whatever they are going through at that point in time. Can I pick up the phone and a user and probably a feature phone and make that conversation, and that conversation is going to make that payment. So everything from the digital commerce to that transaction. The second thing that I strongly believe in is that the entire construct of assisted commerce is going to be needed. That I have CSCs, right? I have the the common service centers where people can walk in and turn around and say, help me get this. And thirdly, very important, is the entire BC network, where they will be able to use the newer stuff that we are talking about, whether it is AEPS, etc., and be able to help move money. But that being said, now I'm going to throw out the slightly controversial point, all right? Cash is still king kind of thing out here. At the end of the day, when the person who's sitting behind his shop and he opens the drawer, he actually wants, because he's the old person like me, white hair, etc., etc. What he's hoping for is when he opens the thing, he feels a certain amount of heft. He sees the coins, he hears the coins, he sees his drawer full of money, and he knows that he's walking home happy. Which means that some of you out there are going to have to build a better reconciliation and settlement engine.
Thank you. एक ही बोला था, but आपने 3 दे दिए. So I think
हो नहीं सकता ना?
three wants for Rahul. Yeah. We are out of time, but maybe quickly, Vikas, one sentence you and Gunjan want to share, like.
Yeah, literally one sentence. Going from click to pay to now touch to pay, now to speak to pay, and maybe in the future think to pay. So it's all about conversational payments future. Folks, I think that is the future of payments.
I think yesterday payments maybe, right? Before even you're going to order, we'll just deduct money. Yeah.
Yes, we will deduct the money for you.
Gunjan, one from you quickly.
Quickly, given, and I'm going to tell about my innovation with one slight preface. India is the largest subscription economy globally. We just haven't been able to capitalize on the way in which we could do subscription payments. So if I had one innovation wish list, it would be designing and executing a super reliable processing payment capability for subscription payments, where you can truly facilitate a champion challenger model. I think that will truly set up India for what is the next phase of growth and make payments truly ubiquitous to every Indian who would want to pay their chai wala, their doodh wala, their water wala, their electricity, everything in one go. And that's essentially what we've been talking about today.
Thank you so much, folks. Stellar set of insights. It's definitely going to help me draw my next 18-month strategy in payments. How do we innovate together? Thanks, everyone.